Castra, senior historian of the New Galactic Archives, adjusted his recording device with a faint hum from his secondary breathing sacs. His voice, rough and deliberate, cut through the silence of the dim lecture hall. Today, I'm going to tell you about the day everything changed, the day the humans from Terra 9 turned the galaxy upside down. His students, a mix of curious young minds from across the stars, leaned in. "Get ready," he said, a faint chuckle escaping him. "This isn't some dry lecture. This is the story of how the most underestimated species in the universe made everyone else look like fools." The story begins on Vionara, the glittering hub of the Galactic Council, a place where self-important leaders ruled over thousands of species and millions of worlds. The Council, a collection of pompous figures bloated with their own sense of superiority, sat in their crystalline chambers, passing judgment like they owned the galaxy. They'd been doing it for centuries, and they were good at it, or so they thought. Then they met the humans from Terra 9, a planet they'd smugly labeled manageable. That word alone was enough to make Castra's membranes quiver with irony. Manageable? The Council had no idea what they were dealing with. Terra 9 wasn't much to look at on the surface. A rocky, stormy world with primitive fusion drives and a handful of colonies, it barely registered as a blip on the Council's radar. The humans were new to the galactic scene, their ships clunky compared to the sleek war fleets of the Clyran Empire or the planet-crushing rigs of the Torvax Collective. But the Council didn't just ignore them, they patronized them. Every move the humans made, every request they submitted, came with a condescending nod or a dismissive wave. "Oh, how cute," the Council would say. "They're trying to play at being a spacefaring civilization." It started small. The Council banned Terra 9 from mining the Nebula Reach, a resource-rich stretch of stars teeming with rare minerals. The official reason? To maintain galactic stability? The real reason? The Council didn't want some upstart species getting too comfortable. Meanwhile, the Clyran Empire was strip mining entire systems, leaving behind nothing but dust and dead planets. The Torvax Collective churned out warships that could crack moons in half, no questions asked. But when Terra 9 asked to set up a single mining outpost, "No, the Council said. You might upset the local ecosystem." The hypocrisy was so thick you could choke on it. Castra paused, letting the absurdity sink in for his students. "You'd think they'd have learned something from history," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. But no. The Council looked at Terra 9's modest tech, their polite diplomats, and their quiet colonies, and they decided they had nothing to worry about. They were wrong, dead wrong. The first real clash came during a council session on Vionara. Ambassador Lena Carter, Terra 9's representative, stood before the central podium, facing Chairman Verak, the council's loudest and most insufferable voice. Verak was a towering figure, his harmonic tones grating on everyone's nerves, but he loved the sound of his own authority. That day, he decided to flex it. "The Council has ruled," he announced, "that Terra 9's expansion into Nebula Reach is a threat to order. Your mining operations are hereby suspended indefinitely." Lena Carter didn't flinch. She stood there, hands clasped, her expression calm, too calm. "I see," she said, her voice steady. "And the Clyran Empire's destruction of the Volter system, did that threaten your order too?" The chamber went quiet for a split second before Verak laughed, a harsh, barking sound that echoed off the walls. "Don't overstep, Ambassador," he snapped. "Your little planet is more like a cage for wild beasts than a member of this council. Know your place." The other delegates joined in, snickering and murmuring their agreement. Lena didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She just smiled, a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. If the council had paid attention, they might have noticed how that smile didn't match her words. They might have wondered what it meant. But they didn't. They were too busy congratulating themselves on putting the humans in their place. Castro leaned forward, his tone shifting to something darker. That smile, he said, was the first warning. The council didn't know it yet, but they'd just lit a fuse. They thought Terra 9 was weak because they were quiet. They thought patience meant submission. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The humans didn't protest a ban. They didn't file complaints or demand a vote. They nodded, adjusted, and kept smiling. The council took it as a victory, proof they tamed a manageable species. They couldn't have been more mistaken. Beneath those smiles, Terra 9 was already planning, building, waiting. The council's arrogance had blinded them to the truth. Humans weren't just surviving under the rules, they were thriving, and they were ready to turn the tables. Mark this moment, Castford told his students. This is where the real story begins, the story of how Terra 9 stopped playing nice. Castford's voice took on a sly edge as he continued, his students hanging on every word. The council thought they'd won that day on Vionara, he said. They figured slapping a mining ban on Terra 9 was enough to keep the humans in line. But here's the thing, they didn't know what those smiles really meant. They didn't see what was coming. He paused, letting the tension build. This is where the humans started playing a game the council didn't even know existed. Ambassador Lena Carter walked out of that council session with her head held high, Varex's insult, a cage for wild beasts, still ringing in the air. The other delegates smirked and whispered, patting themselves on the back for putting Terra 9 in its place. Lena didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Back on Terra 9, her people were already moving, quietly, efficiently, like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. The council saw compliance, the humans saw opportunity. Over the next few cycles, Terra 9 didn't push back against the Nebula Reach ban. They didn't send angry messages or demand a repeal. Instead, they adapted. Their shipping companies, small outfits with names like Horizon Freight and Starline Transports, started picking up more contracts across the galaxy. Nothing flashy, just steady work. Before anyone noticed, 45% of all interstellar cargo was moving through human hands. Their medical labs, tucked away on Terra 9's stormy surface, churned out tech that ended up in half the galaxy's hospitals, scanners, bioregenerators, stuff nobody else could make as cheap or as fast. The humans didn't brag about it. They just kept going, smiling all the while. Casper's membranes buzzed with amusement. The council didn't care, he said. They were too busy strutting around Vionara, handing out rules like candy. They let the Clyran Empire gut whole star systems for profit, but if Terra 9 wanted to build a new colony, file a request, they'd say. Wait your turn. And the humans did. Every time. With those damn smiles. It wasn't just business as usual, though. Beneath the surface, Terra 9 was weaving a web. Their engineers tweaked mining ships to double as cargo haulers, slipping them past council inspections with paperwork so clean it sparkled. Their diplomats, like Lena, nodded politely at every restriction, every lecture, every smug little jab. When the council denied their request to terraform a barren moon in the Solaris system, citing ecological concerns, Lena didn't blink. Understood, she said, and that was it. No fuss, no fight. The council ate it up, convinced they'd train Terra 9 to heal. But then came the next council session, and things got ugly. Varek, drunk on his own power, decided to twist a knife. The chamber was packed that day, delegates from 100 worlds crammed into the tiers, their eyes on the central podium. Varrak stood there, his voice booming. Terra 9's recent growth is concerning, he said, dragging out the word like it tasted bad. Your shipping lanes are clogging our trade routes. Your technicians popping up everywhere. It's time to scale back. The councils decided to tax your exports, 30% starting next cycle. The room buzzed. A tax that high would choke most economies, and everyone knew it. Heads turned to Lena, expecting her to crack. She stood up, smoothing her jacket, and smiled. That's an interesting choice, she said, her tone light, almost playful. Mind if I ask something first? Varrak waved a hand, smirking. Go ahead, Ambassador. Enlighten us. Lena's smile didn't budge. The Clyran Empire's been dumping waste into the Havocs Nebula for years, killed off 3 species last cycle. No tax there. The Torvax collectives got a fleet that could wipe out half this council, and you're subsidizing their fuel. But Terra 9 moves some cargo, fixes some broken bones, and you slap us with a 30% hit. Why's that? The chamber went dead quiet. Varrak's smirk faltered, just for a second, before he doubled down. Because you're new, he snapped. You don't get to question us. You're a backwater planet with delusions of grandeur. Sit down. The delegates erupted, some laughing, some shouting approval. One Clyran rep yelled, "Put the beasts back in their cage." Another, a Torvax commander, pounded his fist on the table, grinning like he'd won a bet. Lena didn't sit. She stood there, taking it all in, that smile still plastered on her face. Then she leaned forward, voice low but clear. This will have consequences, she said. I hope you're ready. Varrak laughed, a loud, grating howl. Consequences, he mocked. What are you gonna do, Ambassador? Cry about it. The room roared again, the noise swallowing her words. Lena didn't flinch. She just nodded, turned, and walked out, leaving the council cackling like they'd won some grand victory. Casper's voice dropped to a whisper. That was their mistake, he said. They thought they'd humiliated her. They thought Terra 9 would roll over. They didn't know the humans were already 3 steps ahead. Back on Terra 9, the gears were turning faster. Those cargo haulers started stockpiling resources, metals, fuel, tech, nothing illegal, just smart. Human corporations locked down contracts with key planets, tying their economies to Terra 9's output. The council didn't notice because they didn't care. They were too busy slapping each other on the back, too blind to see the trap being set. They thought patience was weakness, Casper said, his eyes glinting. They thought those smiles were surrender. They were wrong. And they were about to pay for it. Casper's voice grew sharper, his membranes humming with anticipation. The council didn't stop at insults, he said, leaning toward his students. They wanted to crush Terra 9, show the galaxy who was boss. So they doubled down, and that's when things got real. He straightened up, his tone darkening. This is the part where the humans stopped pretending. After that humiliating session on Vionara, Chairman Varrak and his cronies decided a tax wasn't enough. They needed something bigger, something to prove Terra 9 couldn't bite back. The plan? A full-on blockade. The council called it enforcement of galactic order, but everyone knew what it was, a power play. They tapped the Fifth Fleet, a hulking armada of 250 warships under Admiral Zyler, a grizzled Clyran hardliner who loved breaking things. The orders were simple: lock down Terra 9's home system, Solara, and choke their trade routes until they beg for mercy. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace just beyond Terra 9's orbit, a wall of gleaming steel and plasma cannons. Xyler's flagship, the Iron Fang, broadcast a message across every frequency: "This is Admiral Xyler of the Galactic Council. Terra 9 is hereby restricted. All ships will stand down, or we'll turn your colonies to ash, starting with Illyra." Illyra was a small outpost on Solara's third moon, home to 50,000 humans, mostly miners, and their families. Xyler wasn't bluffing, he'd leveled planets for less. Back on Terra 9, Admiral Holt got the message. Holt was a different breed, calm, almost eerily so, the kind of guy who'd sip coffee while a supernova went off. He sat in the command center, a stark room buried under Terra 9's stormy crust, and listened to Xyler's threat. His staff waited for orders, tense but steady. Holt cracked a small, lopsided grin. "Well," he said, "guess they're here. Let's say hi." He keyed the comms. "This is Admiral Holt. Welcome to Solara. Hope you brought sunscreen." Xyler didn't laugh. "You've got 10 minutes to surrender," he barked. "Or Illyra's gone." The Fifth Fleet tightened its formation, weapons hot, ready to make good on the threat. Across the galaxy, Council delegates watched the feed, smirking. They figured Terra 9's puny defense force, maybe a dozen outdated frigates, didn't stand a chance. They were half right. Terra 9's navy wasn't much to look at. But Holt wasn't planning to fight fair. "Launch the Falcons," Holt said, his voice casual, like he was ordering takeout. The Falcons weren't warships, they were mining rigs, boxy haulers called Falcon 7s, built to drag ore from Solara's asteroid belt. The Council had approved them years ago, classified them as civilian assets. Harmless. Except Holt had other ideas. Dozens of Falcons fired up their engines and drifted into the belt, a jagged ring of rock and ice circling Solara. Xyler's sensors picked them up, but he didn't flinch. "What's this?" he sneered over the comms. "Sending miners to beg." Holt's grin widened. "Not quite. Watch this." He nodded to his ops officer. "Operation Dust Devil, go." The Falcons activated their gravity tethers, standard gear for towing asteroids. But these weren't standard settings. The humans had tweaked the tech, syncing the tethers to pulse in unison. When they flipped the switch, the belt came alive. Asteroids, some the size of houses, others big as city blocks, started shifting, pulled by invisible strings. At first, it looked random. Then the pattern locked in. The gravity pulses didn't just move the rocks, they slung them. Fast. A swarm of asteroids barreled toward the Fifth Fleet, a shotgun blast of stone and metal tearing through space. Xyler's smug tone vanished. "Evasive maneuvers," he yelled, but it was too late. The fleet scattered, ships dodging left and right as rocks smashed into shields and hulls. One cruiser took a direct hit, its engine pod crumpling like tinfoil. No weapons fired, no missiles launched, just mining gear doing what it was approved to do. "This is war." Xyler roared, his voice cracking over the comms. Holt's reply was pure ice. "War? Nah. We're just moving some rocks. If your ships are in the way, that's on you." He leaned back in his chair, watching the chaos unfold. The Falcons kept at it, wave after wave of asteroids forcing the fleet to break formation. Xyler tried to regroup, barking orders, but every time his ships lined up, another rock storm hit. The iron fan nearly ate a boulder the size of a stadium, only a last-second thruster burn saved it. The council feed was a mess. Delegates who'd been laughing minutes ago were now shouting, demanding Xyler do something. But there was nothing to do. Terra 9 hadn't broken a single rule. The Falcons were civilian ships, the gravity tethers were legal tech, and the asteroids? Just part of Solara's natural charm. After 6 hours of this cosmic pinball, Xyler's fleet was a wreck, half the ships damaged, the rest scattered. Holt keyed the comms again. "Hey, Xyler," he said, almost friendly. "Ilra's still here. You're not. Maybe take the hint and park somewhere else, like outside Solara." Xyler didn't answer. The Fifth Fleet limped away, calling it a tactical retreat. Casper's voice cut in, thick with glee. "The Council called it a loss," he said. "The humans called it a warm-up. And Xyler? He learned what happens when you threaten a kid's home in front of a guy like Holt." But it wasn't over. While the Council reeled, Terra 9's ships across the galaxy started shifting, subtle moves, quiet repositioning. The Falcons weren't just a stunt. They were a signal. That blockade, Casper said, was the match. What came next was the fire. Casper's voice dropped low, his membranes quivering as he leaned into the story. "The blockade was a wake-up call," he said, "but it was nothing compared to what came next. The Council didn't just poke Terra 9, they stabbed it. And that's when the humans showed their teeth." His students sat silent, eyes wide, sensing the shift. This is where patience ran out. The Fifth Fleet's retreat left the Council scrambling. Varek and his lackeys couldn't stomach the loss. Terra 9 had made them look weak, and they needed a win, fast. Their next move was as dumb as it was brutal. The Dawn Star, a Terra 9 medical ship, was en route to Illyria, the same moon Xyler had threatened. It carried 10,000 doses of a vaccine for a nasty bug ripping through the colony, something called red fever, a killer if it spread. The ship wasn't armed, wasn't even fast, just a boxy hauler painted white with red stripes, crewed by doctors and nurses. Leading them was Dr. Emily Voss, a woman who'd spent 20 years patching up war zones and plague pits across the galaxy. The Dawn Star hit the proximate checkpoint, a Council-run choke point near Solara's edge. That's where the Justice Claw was waiting, an enforcement frigate under Commander Corin, a Torvax hothead with a trigger finger and a grudge. Corin had watched the blockade fail from afar, and he was itching to prove Terra 9 wasn't untouchable. He hailed the Dawn Star with a snarl. "This is Commander Corin. You're carrying contraband. Power down for inspection, or we'll board you by force." Emily Voss stood at her console, still in her medical whites, her gray-streaked hair pulled back tight. She didn't blink. "This ship's got 10,000 doses of red fever vaccine," she said, her voice flat but firm. "Illyria's got kids dying right now. Delay us, and they're dead. You hearing me, Corin?" Her crew watched her, steady but tense. They knew her rep. Voss had stared down pirates and plague lords without flinching. This was just another day. Corin laughed, a harsh, guttural sound. "Contraband's contraband, Doc. Don't care about your sob story. Stand down, or I'll make you." Emily's jaw tightened, but she kept her cool. "Last chance," she said. "Confirm you understand, kids will die?" Corin didn't hesitate. "Fire a warning shot," he ordered his gunners. A plasma bolt lanced across the Dawn Star's bow. "Close, too close." It grazed the cargo bay, frying 5,000 doses in a flash of heat and light. No one died, but half the shipment was gone. The bridge went quiet. Emily stared at the damage report, her face unreadable. Then she looked up, and something in her eyes changed, cold, hard, like a switch flipping. "You just killed kids," she said, barely above a whisper. Corin smirked over the comms. "That's on you, rat. Should have stood down. Now open your hatches, or the next one's not a warning." Voss didn't reply. She turned to her ops officer, a young guy named Patel, and nodded. "Protocol Sentinel. Now." Patel hesitated. "Doc, you sure?" She cut him off. "Do it." He punched in the code, and the Dawn Star hummed to life, not with weapons, but with something weirder. The hull sprouted scanners, standard medical gear, the kind used to map broken bones or busted lungs. Except these weren't scanning patients. They locked onto the Justice Claw, pinging every weld, every stress point, every weak spot in its frame. Emily keyed the comms, her voice so calm it was terrifying. "Commander Corin, let me put this in terms you'll get. You just turned my ship into a patient. I'm a doctor, I know where to cut." The scanners fed data to the Dawn Star's thrusters, recalibrating them to push micro-pressure waves. One burst, aimed right, could snap the Justice Claw's spine like a twig. It wasn't a weapon, not technically. It was just physics, turned mean. Corin's smirk died. "What the hell is this?" he snapped, his screens lighting up with alerts. Emily didn't blink. "You've got 10 seconds to power down your guns. After that, I perform emergency surgery. Survival rate 0. Clock's ticking." The Justice Claw's crews scrambled, sensors screaming as the pressure waves started probing. At 8 seconds, Corin caved. "Stand down," he yelled, his voice shaking. The frigate's weapons went dark, and the Dawn Star held steady, scanners still locked. Emily didn't celebrate. She opened a channel to Terra 9, her tone flat. "They killed kids." The reply came fast, echoing across every human ship, station, and colony in Solara. "No more nice." It wasn't a shout, just a statement, cold and final. Back on Vionara, the council feed caught the exchange, and the delegates went pale. Corin's surrender wasn't the point. That message was. Casper's voice cut through, sharp and heavy. "That was the line," he said. "Voss didn't just save her ship, she lit the fuse. The council thought they could push Terra 9 around, break their toys, hurt their people. They didn't know Emily Voss had spent her life saving lives, and she wasn't about to let some punk like Corin take them. The Dawn Star limped onto Ilro with what was left of the vaccine, but the damage was done. Across the galaxy, human crews heard the call. Ships shifted course. Stations powered up systems nobody knew they had. Terra 9 wasn't just mad, they were ready. Corin thought he'd won a little victory, Casper said, his tone grim. He didn't know he'd just started a war, one the council couldn't win. Casper's voice took on a weight that filled the room, his students barely breathing as he spoke. The Dawn Star was the tipping point, he said, his membranes buzzing with intensity. The council thought they could push Terra 9 around, break their stuff, hurt their kids, and walk away. They were wrong. This is where the humans stopped asking nicely, and started telling. He leaned forward, eyes glinting. This is where the galaxy learned what Terra 9 was really made of. Word of the Justice Claw's attack spread fast. On Terra 9, the mood shifted, anger, yes, but something colder, sharper. The humans didn't riot or scream. They got quiet, and that was scarier. Ambassador Lena Carter got the call from Dr. Voss while she was prepping for another pointless council meeting on Vionara. They killed kids, Voss had said, and Lena's face went still. She didn't cry or curse. She just nodded, hung up, and swapped her diplomatic robes for a black suit, crisp, no frills, the kind you wear to a funeral or a fight. Then she walked straight to the council chamber. The place was a circus as usual, delegates bickering, Varrak droning on about maintaining order after the blockade flop. Lena didn't wait for an invite. She pushed through the doors, heels clicking on the polished floor, and every head turned. Varrak sneered from the podium. "Ambassador Carter," he said, his voice dripping venom, "you're late. Here to apologize for your little mining stunt." The room chuckled, but it died fast when they saw her face. No smile this time, just steel. "I've got a message from Terra 9, Lena said, loud enough to cut through the noise. She stepped to the center, hands in her pockets, casual but commanding. "You've got 10 hours to stand down, drop the bans, the taxes, the blockades, all of it. Surrender unconditionally, or we're done being nice." The chamber exploded, laughter, shouts, disbelief. Varrak slammed his fist on the podium. "Surrender," he barked. "To you? What's your big threat? More rocks?" Lena didn't flinch. 10 hours, she repeated. Clock's ticking. She turned to leave, but Varrak wasn't done. "And if we say no," he called, mocking. Lena paused, glanced back, and gave him a look that could have frozen a star. "Then you'll see why Terra 9's a death world. Your call." She walked out, leaving the council in chaos, half laughing, half scrambling to figure out if she was bluffing. She wasn't. Back in Solara, the humans were moving. For years, they'd been mining the Orion Veil, a dense asteroid field the council barely policed. The paperwork said resource extraction, boring, routine. The council signed off on every permit, every ship design, never asking questions. Big mistake. Those mining ops weren't just pulling ore, they were building something. At hour 2 of the ultimatum, the signal went out. Across the veil, asteroids cracked open like eggs, and the mystery fleet spilled out thousands of ships, sleek and ugly, bristling with gear the council had never seen. Admiral Holt watched from Terra 9's command center, his comm unbroken. "Showtime," he muttered, and flipped the comms. "All units, go live." The fleet didn't look like anything in the council's playbook, no shiny hulls or standard layouts. These were patchwork monsters, stitched together from mining rigs, cargo haulers, and med ships, armed with lasers meant to cut rock but sharp enough to slice armor. Gravity tethers, same ones from the blockade, hummed online, ready to sling debris or yank ships out of formation. It was a fleet built under the council's nose, legal down to the last bolt. Vionara's sensors lit up as the mystery fleet fanned out, not just in Solara, but across every major trade lane, every choke point. Council stations picked up the chatter. "What the hell are those? Where'd they come from?" Panic hit fast. Varrak called an emergency session, his voice shaking as he yelled, "This is an act of war?" His advisors weren't so sure. A Torvax general muttered, "They haven't fired a shot." A Clyran rep snapped, "Doesn't matter, they've got us pinned." Lena didn't need to be there to twist a knife. At hour 5, she sent a data burst to the council, a breakdown of Terra 9's reach. Human ships hauled 45% of galactic cargo. Their mines supplied 40% of rare metals. Their medtech kept 60% of hospitals running. You build this on us, the message read. Restrict us, and it all stops. Your economy tanks, 47% drop, overnight. Your move. The numbers checked out. Delegates started sweating, pulling their own stats, whispering about collapse. Verac sputtered, "This is blackmail," but nobody argued the math. Hour 7, and the cracks showed. The Torvax wanted to fight, damn the cost. The Clyron delegation pushed to negotiate, scared of losing their supply lines. Verac tried to rally them, slamming the podium. "We've got fleets. We'll crush them." A quiet aide slid him a report. 60% of Council infrastructure, ships, stations, weapons, relied on Terra 9 parts or pilots. Verac's face went gray. "They can't do this," he hissed. "They wouldn't dare." They did. Hour 9, and the mystery fleet ran a demo. Every ship flipped on its shields at once, a pulse so strong it tripped sensors 3 sectors away. Mining lasers carved a dead asteroid into dust, just a flex, but the message was clear. Holt's voice crackled over open channels, "We're not here to fight. Yet. Your call, Verac." The council chamber was a madhouse, yelling, cursing, a Clyron rep storming out. Verac clung to his podium, barking orders nobody followed. Castro's voice cut in, thick with satisfaction. "That fleet wasn't just power," he said. "It was proof. Terra 9 didn't break a single rule building it, every piece approved by the Council's own hands. They'd been so busy laughing, they never asked what those mining ships were really for." He paused. Verac thought he could bully them. Voss's kids proved he couldn't. And Lena? She gave them 10 hours to figure it out. The clock hit 9 hours, 50 minutes. The council was split, half ready to cave, half itching to hit back. Verac screamed for a vote, but the room was too loud, too messy. Terra 9 didn't wait. Ships started pulling back from trade routes, med stations powered down non-critical gear, miners went idle. It wasn't an attack, it was a warning. They didn't need guns, Castro said, grinning. They had something better, everything the council couldn't live without. Castro's voice softened, but there was a wicked edge to it, like he was savoring the punchline. "The 10 hours were up," he said, his students leaning in so close they might have fallen out of their seats. "The council had their chance, 10 whole hours to back off, say sorry, anything. They didn't. They figured Terra 9 was bluffing, that the mystery fleet was just a big show. They were wrong, dead wrong. This is where it all fell apart, and not how anyone expected." The deadline hit, and Vionara braced for war. Delegates clutched their data pads, eyes on the feeds, waiting for the mystery fleet to open fire. Verac stood at the podium, sweating through his robes, barking at his aides to get the fleets ready. The Fifth Fleet was still licking its wounds, but he had others, hundreds of ships, itchy for a fight. "They won't dare," he shouted, voice cracking. "We'll bury them." The chamber buzzed, half the room cheering him on, half muttering about the numbers Lena had dropped. 60% of their infrastructure tied to Terra 9? Nobody wanted to believe it, but the math didn't lie. Out in Solara, Admiral Holt watched the clock tick past 10. He didn't flinch. "They had their shot," he said, voice steady as ever. He nodded to his ops team. "Plan eclipse, roll it out." No missiles launched. No lasers fired. The mystery fleet didn't budge. Instead, something quieter, and way uglier, started happening. Across the galaxy, human ships went dark. Cargo haulers like Horizon Freight powered down mid-route, stranding billions of tons of goods. Mining rigs in the Orion Veil shut off, cutting the flow of rare metals cold. Med stations, ones running council hospitals, flipped to emergency only, leaving routine care in the dust. Back on Vionara, the first signs hit fast. A hospital in the capital lost its bioregenerators, Terra 9 tech, offline. Patients piled up, screaming for help, while staff scrambled with outdated gear. Trade hubs blinked out as human pilots radioed in, taking a break, union rules. Within hours, food shipments stalled, fuel prices spiked, and factories ground to a halt. The Council's fancy war fleets? Half their spare parts came from Terra 9 foundries that just went silent. No attack, no invasion, just a galaxy-sized middle finger. Verak got the reports and lost it. "This is sabotage," he yelled, slamming the podium so hard it cracked. "Get me their ambassador." Lena Carter didn't show. She sent a message instead, short and sweet: "You pushed. We pulled. Deal with it." The chamber turned into a shouting match. The Torvax wanted to bomb Terra 9 flat, screw the fallout. The Clyron reps begged for talks, their economy already tanking. A junior aide ran the numbers: 47% economic drop, just like Lena promised, and climbing. Verak ignored it, screaming for decisive action, but nobody listened. The council was cracking. Hour 12, and Vionara started unraveling. Riots broke out in the lower districts: hungry workers, pissed off medics, traders with empty ships. The council's enforcers couldn't keep up, their own gear, human-made, was failing. A Torvax general stormed into the chamber, face purple. "My fleet's dead in orbit," he roared. "Engines won't start, your damn human parts." He grabbed Verak by the collar, and it took 3 guards to pull him off. The Clyron delegation walked out, muttering about cutting losses. Verak yelled after them, "Cowards. We'll win this," but his voice was drowned by alarms blaring across the city. By hour 15, the real twist hit. It wasn't Terra 9 that finished them, it was their own. The riots spread, and a coalition of mid-tier reps, species sick of Verak's crap, stormed the chamber. "You did this," a wiry delegate from Havox shouted, pointing at Verak. "You pissed them off, and now we're screwed." The vote came fast, messy, no procedure, just raw panic. Verak was out, dragged off by his own guards, yelling about traitors as the doors slammed shut. The new leadership, a shaky mix of Clyron and Havoc suits, sent a plea to Terra 9, "Stand down. We'll talk." Lena Carter showed up then, still in that black suit, calm as a graveyard. She walked in, hands in her pockets, and looked at the mess: sweating delegates, busted podium, a council on its knees. "You're late," she said, voice dry. "We asked for 10 hours, not 15. The new chair, a Clyron named Taran, stammered, "We'll lift everything, the bans, the taxes. Just turn it back on." Lena tilted her head, like she was thinking it over. Then she shrugged. "Nah." The room froze. "What?" Taran croaked. Lena stepped closer, voice low. "You don't get it. We're not here to fix your mess. You built this on us, hospitals, ships, trade, and you thought you could kick us around. We're done propping you up. Figure it out." She turned and walked out, leaving them gaping. No takeover, no demands, just a hard pass. Terra 9 didn't want the Council's throne. They wanted it to bleed. Casper's voice cut in, rich with dark glee. That was the kicker, he said. Everyone thought Terra 9 would roll in, take charge, play the hero or the villain. Nope. They let Vionara rot, hospitals dark, streets burning, the Council eating itself alive. The mystery fleet didn't fire a shot. Didn't need to. The humans had already won by walking away. Days later, Terra 9 hummed along, quiet but strong. Their ships rerouted to friendly systems, their mines fed their own colonies, their medtech stayed home. Vionara rebuilt, sort of, new leaders, new rules, but the shine was gone. The Council wasn't dead, just humbled, limping on without the humans they'd leaned on too hard. They didn't need to rule, Casper said. They just needed to remind everyone, push us, and we pushed back, by letting you fall. He leaned back, satisfied. That's the human trick, kids. They don't always fight loud. Sometimes they just stop helping, and that's worse. Varex's gone, the Council's a shell, and Terra 9? They're out there, watching, smiling again. But now we know what those smiles mean. Alright, Space Fam, that's the epic tale of Terra 9 flipping the galaxy without a single shot, pure HFY brilliance. Watched it all? Awesome. Tell me in the comments, Holt, Voss, or Carter, who's your badass MVP? I'm dying to know. Smash that like if you loved it, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Space, hit the bell so you don't miss our next sci-fi banger. See you in the stars.